this global crisis.
It's the most up-to-date assessment of how global warming...
Over 83 million people are expected to die globally over the next 80 years.
When I was about 8 years old, I first heard about something called climate change or global warming. Apparently that was something humans had created by our way of living. I was told to turn off the lights to save energy and to recycle paper to save resources. I remember thinking that it was very strange that humans, who are an animal species among others, how dare you?
In a world full of carbon emissions, there's a girl with strong convictions.
Our galaxy, the Milky Way, is estimated to contain more than 100 billion stars, many of which can be seen glistening away in the night sky. But stars, just like everything else, do not last forever.
The Bible tells us that this environment is now futile. So church family, listen up carefully. This is a very serious thing, what I'm about to say. It may sound funny, you might want to laugh it off, but it's not a funny thing for those that are blind. And that is, everything we hear, and you're about to hear so much more of it regarding the election season. We've got to save the planet. Do you know that?
As soon as you turn on the TV, everything would be about that. Headlines, radio, newspapers. You would never read or hear about anything else.
Biden warning about the real threat facing humanity, and it's got nothing to do with nuclear warfare.
In a closed-door event in New York City, it was a fundraiser, Biden telling the donors, quote, if we don't stay under 1.5 degrees Celsius, we're going to have a real problem. It's the single most existential threat to humanity we have ever faced, including nuclear weapons.
Mr. President, you call climate change a code red for humanity. The World Health Organization said it will cause an additional 250,000 deaths a year starting in 2030. Are you prepared to declare a national emergency with respect to climate change?
We've already done that. Nationally, we've conserved more land. We've moved into, we've rejoined the Paris Climate Accord. We passed a $368 billion climate control facility. We're moving. It is the existential threat to humanity.
So you've already declared that national emergency?
Practically speaking, yes.
Yeah.
President Biden still thinks climate change is the greatest threat to our world. Brian, just watch this. Roll it.
Does the president stand by that comment?
Absolutely he does. Climate change is an existential threat. It actually threatens and is capable of wiping out all human life on Earth over time.
He said it was more frightening than a nuclear war. Is that it's more frightening than a nuclear war in this moment?
The president believes wholeheartedly that climate change is an existential threat to all of human life on the planet.
We have 12 years to act.
We have 12 years.
We have 12 years before the effects are irreversible.
Really? 12 years?
The world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change.
12 years?
Well, and in 12 years, it'll be 12 more years.
David Legates is a professor of climatology at the University of Delaware. Pat Michaels is former president of the American Association of State Climatologists. Willie Soon is an astrophysicist.
It's all about hand waving, it's about emotion, about sending out kids in protest. We have nothing to do with the science.
This group pointed out that even if the planet warms by 5 degrees, humans can adjust.
Guess what? Who do we think we are? That we're a speck on the timeline. We're a grain of sand denying the existence of God. Here's what we're really saying. We got to save the planet because there is no God. Or, what's worse, we got to save the planet because the God that we know can't save it. He's lost control of what he made. We've got to save it. Yeah, and how are you going to do that? Are we well, I already know the answer. I was going to say, are we insane? The answer is yes, we are. We're going to save the planet. How does that, really? We have to recycle. Yeah, knock yourself out. That's great. No more carbon footprint. Well, if there's no carbon, we have a big problem. I just want you to know that. All the trees die. All the grass goes dead.
Just want you.
Well, where there's truth is that carbon is the basis of all life on Earth. And where there's truth is that carbon dioxide is the source of that carbon for all life on Earth. So the curves are there to look at on the internet. You can see it. CO2 has been declining to where it is getting close to the end of plant life. And another 1.8 million years, if you just take that line and draw it straight down, another 1.8 million years, life would begin to die on planet Earth for lack of CO2.
Not because of an excess.
There is no such thing as an excess of CO2 under any real-world circumstance.
Well, the message out there is pretty clear that there is such a thing.
No, there isn't. Because it's proven fact, for example, that greenhouse growers they actually buy CO2 in bottles.
Well, I know, they pump it in.
They pump it in to get it up to 1,000 parts per million. The optimum CO2 level for plant growth, which, when you think about it, is the basis of all the animal life on Earth, every insect, every vertebrate, every invertebrate, all the things that are not plants depend on the plants for their existence. The sugars the plants produce through photosynthesis are the energy supply for the whole world. What are those sugars made out of? Water and carbon dioxide.
I get to the point where, like, the voices are so loud that I'm going, okay, how do I find where there actually is truth?
Can human beings be programmed?
Watch this. Go ahead. Watch this.
Despite what you might be thinking, these two circles are not equal. I repeat, these two circles are not equal. One is in fact larger than the other.
Which one do you think
What
is
I
bigger?
need you to do is determine which one that is.
Red or blue?
So, please raise your
I
hand
got
if you
this one
believe the
right.
blue circle is larger than the red.
They look exactly the same, but blue looks maybe a little bit bigger.
All right. Please raise your hand if you believe the red circle is larger than the blue. All right, very good. Now, before I said anything about these two circles, what was your first instinct? Equal, right? Because they look equal. And the reason why they look equal is because, in fact, they are equal. These two circles are identical. Yet I got just about every one of you to raise your hand and say that they're not. So what do we learn? That you can be manipulated like that to believe in something that goes against your natural instincts. Just imagine as a child you're taught that the blue circle is larger than the red. If you say it enough times, you convince yourself that's the truth. If you're told the lie enough times, it becomes part of your reality.
Wow.
And if enough people are taught that lie, that the blue circle is larger than the red, well, now it becomes part of the culture. And if that culture then passes that misinformation along to the next generation, well, now it becomes tradition.
Oh my God. What do you think about this when you see this? What's your reaction? How much truth is there with the credibility of how they're using this to get people to say, no, it's real, it's real, it's real. Let me say, oh, maybe it is real.
Yeah.
Let me buy into it, right?
It's totally real. We've seen things generationally in the United States that were started by one political party that were adopted by another, and then and now you look back in history, wait, that's not the way it is. This political party said this when it started. I can look at history, but we've gone through generations where it's been appropriated the other way. It's all over the place in
This
American
pretty much
politics.
describes our educational system, by the way.
Bingo.
You've heard the news. 97% of scientists agree.
Climate change is getting worse. Carbon could cost us the planet. Just look out the window.
Look out the window? Because it's a hot day and her tiny piece of the world? How shallow is that? And what does it mean when we hear...
The debate is settled. 97%.
97%. 97% of scientists agree.
This budget requests $1.1 billion to address climate change.
The agency doesn't get money going in front of a congressional committee and say, you know, my issue, it's really not a problem. You ought to give the money to somebody else. No, instead, issues compete with each other for your money. And so you have to scare them.
We have to act in this decade. As someone who gets paid to do research, I'm really excited. I'm going to go home and have fun. And so, to summarize, we have much scientific confidence that warming is contributing to sea level rise and other changes.
I've lived through 8 environmental apocalypses: the population bomb, acid rain, the ozone hole, global cooling, you name it. The global warming scare has longer legs because it's got more money.
That also gives climate alarmists a reason to squash dissent.
The climate change deniers suggest there's still a debate over the science. There is not.
I bought what they were saying.
Judith Curry is a climate scientist at Georgia Tech. She once agreed with the scaremongers.
What changed?
Well, ClimateGate.
Emails reveal a plot among the world's top climate scientists.
A group of esteemed scientists were strategizing to squash their opponents. And I thought, oh, wait a minute. Why should I believe this instead of my own judgment?
Renewable energy. Renewable energy, of course, is supposedly attractive because it's so cheap, it's virtually free. Well, that's what they want you to believe. But have you noticed the more of this free energy there is, the more expensive our power bills actually become? We're also told renewable energy is effective and it can actually replace the legacy baseload power systems that are currently fueled by coal and gas. Well, that too is a fantastic claim. For all the hundreds of billions of dollars spent on renewable energy, it comprises less than 16% of global energy supply, and the vast majority of that, it comes from burning wood. Wind and solar actually account for just 4% of the mix. The greenies, though, will tell you that's not true. Crony capitalist outfits like the World Economic Forum will claim wind and solar account for 10% of global energy. Well, they're wrong.
The most maddening part of all of that, though, is that these policies, they're not just destroying lives. They're rooted in lies, all of them. Our next guest was once a climate alarmist, but now says the entire movement is, quote, a scam. Tom Harris is the executive director of the International Climate Science Coalition. He joins me now. Tom, good to see you tonight. Now, you actually say the only way to get rid of this is to go after the science of climate change. Explain.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people will say, well, you know, Canada, for example, puts out so little greenhouse gas emissions that we shouldn't actually try to reduce it because China is double the United States. Well, the trouble is people argue that, well, yes, but we have to set an example to the world and we have to be good citizens and all that sort of thing. So they're using these arguments quite often that China's doubled the emissions of the US, et cetera. But the real underlying thing is that there is no climate crisis, that there are thousands of scientists. And here's a book, actually, that illustrates that. It's called Climate Change Reconsidered, and this is on climatechangereconsidered.org. There are thousands of references here which talk about the fact that there is no foundation to the climate scare. It's all based on models that don't work.
The idea that carbon dioxide is carbon pollution that just does harm and threatens the food supply.
So if you're really concerned about the plants, more carbon dioxide makes them not just grow faster, but also makes them more water efficient.
Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, but it also helps feed the world.
A lot of people pretend to know about climate, pretend to have studied it, pretend to come up with these answers, and then make these proclamations to scare you so that you'll do what we want you to do.
But if what the alarmists say is not true, why would the International Panel on Climate Change, the United Nations, go along with the exaggerations?
Governments like control. Most governments want to keep control, and most governments get bigger and bigger over time.
IPCC does stand for Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change.
Carbon dioxide becomes that molecule by which we can take control of your lives, of your efforts, and everything that goes on.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
The scientific consensus is that we are causing global warming. I am Al Gore. I used to be the next president of the United States of America. This is Mount Kilimanjaro more than 30 years ago and more recently. And a friend of mine just came back from Kilimanjaro with a picture he took a couple months ago.
What?
Huh? How dare you? How dare.
Friend Lonnie Thompson studies glaciers. Here's Lonnie with a last sliver of one of the once mighty glaciers.
What?
Within the decade, there will be no more snows of Kilimanjaro.
What? Huh?
How dare you? How dare.
This is happening in Glacier National Park. I climbed to the top of this in 1998 with one of my daughters. Within 15 years, this will be the park formerly known as Glacier.
What? Huh?
And it's a shame because these glaciers are so beautiful.
How dare you?
She sailed across the ocean to attend climate summits. She was told the world was going to end in 5 years, but to her horror, we are all still here. Oh dear.
How dare you? How dare you?